So, Karsten, I just approved and uploaded your slides, so they're ready for you to share. And I guess so. And Christian is here. Hey, Christian. So I'm going to be on for the beginning of this, and then Christian will be on his own after that.
So you want me to share the slides now?
Well, let's do my item first, because I want to.
Okay.
I need to get off after that. So it's just the time tag thing.
Okay.
I guess it's time to start. It's top of the hour. So welcome to the second interim of the year for CBOR. First item on the menu here is time tag finishing up working group last call. Looks like there's no issues really on that. There was some discussion. Karsten, do you have any updates on the bit of discussion that went along? Karsten?
It takes a long time to unmute. Sorry, I used the left unmute, the left mute. I should never use the left mute. Sorry. Update from the discussion. You mean what happened on the mailing list? Or?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So this is really a long-standing discussion we have had a couple of times already, where we started out defining a tag with an information in a document, and then it turned out people actually wanted to have normative references to the specification of that tag. And I think we need to get a bit better in having a standard rule for handling this kind of case. And in this specific situation, I think Henk is not here, but there seem to be some security applications that actually would benefit from the time tag being normative document. Now, this is, of course, always an interesting question when you have a document that itself is extensible to a certain extent. Then part of that may be rock solid stable, and part of that may be things that people put in because they think they will need them. And the transition from an informational document to a standards track document, of course, raises the question how we handle the second category. So things like clock quality are needed to a certain extent for the security applications, but that's certainly something that can be discussed. So going from informational to standards track does raise additional questions during the working group last call, which makes me say this is not entirely a slam dunk, but I think that in total we do have good arguments for moving this to standards track.
Does anyone see a reason not to move it to standards track? And certainly no one mentioned it on the mailing list. So.
Well, there have been some GitHub discussions about the clock quality, and in particular about the fact that the clock quality is defined in terms of an RFC that actually doesn't define anything at all, but then just references IEEE 1588, which is behind a paywall. So many IEEE standards are available through the Get IEEE program, but this one isn't. So that ruffled some feathers.
Yes, and that is mentioned in the Shepherd write-up that I did. So we'll see what the IESG thinks about that. My inclination would be to say, I'm just as a participant, my inclination is to go to standards track on it. but I'm open to counter arguments. So, well, how about if we say that? First of all, do you have any updates to make to it otherwise?
Yes, there have been quite a few comments over in the GitHub.
Right,
So
that's what
I
I
think
thought.
there will be a next version, and I probably would have worked on that this week, but I prioritized CDDL2. So I think this will happen next week.
Sure. Okay, so then why don't we say that on the next version you make it standards track, and I will change the data tracker to go to standards track, and we will, when you post that to the mailing list, we'll make another quick call of whether there are any objections to that change. Does that sound reasonable?
Sounds good to me.
Okay. Anybody else have anything to say about time tag? Okay, hearing nothing, Karsten, go ahead and go to your slides for the next item, CDDL.
The user interface is always great. When you select the slide set, the layout changes in such a way that you have to press dismiss at this point in time, because that's just the thing under the cursor. Great. Anyway, so I made 2 slides about what's going on with the CDDL 2.0 support. And I think the most important thing that people ask about is the include feature. And in IETF 115, I had this example on the slide with a semicolon hash, which will be our pragma prefix unless somebody comes up with a better one. And then the keyword include, and then we have various information, including where that thing is coming from, and how it will be namespaced within the document that does the include. So the next line, event start equals time tag dot etime, is my proposal for this. When we give something a name, like time tag here, or if we don't do that, when we just use the file name for that purpose, then we can reference this as prefix dot whatever it's called in the reference file. So that seems to work pretty well, and I just did a version of the uccs.cdl that has an include for RFC 1952, and that all works nicely. Yes, Michael, the semicolon makes this a comment in a CDDL1 implementation, so you can still run your CDDL1 tools on this without hiccups. Well, I chose the hash mark because that's something that people know from C for this pragma style comment. And then, of course, the stylistic question is whether there should be a space behind the hash or not. We can discuss that. So probably I'm going to do a little mailing list poll for that. But otherwise, the syntax is probably going to steal Python syntax a little bit more than C language syntax. And I think it's also important to make sure that we don't allow arbitrary file system references here. So right now, this is very limited in what you can have after the word include. So what's after the word include essentially is limited to CDDL identifiers. So the problem with the wholesale include is that you get all these additional rules that you actually don't need. So right now I'm thinking about reducing this to just the rules that are actually imported, plus the transitive closure of the reference. So everything that is needed to make this usage timetag.etime is also imported from the include, but not the whole document, because there may be other things in there. For instance, we often have a start element to make CDDL1 tools happy. So that will not actually be imported, and it will not lead to unused rule warnings, which could be pretty jarring. So for the existing RFCs, it's pretty obvious how to handle this, except that there is one question: how do we handle the prelude? I'm actually in the current implementation, I just have the word prelude for that because it's really very special. But we could also identify this as Appendix D of RFC 8610. I'm not sure we need this. So at the time when I actually import all the RFCs, I will try to check what we actually need there. So how does it work in practice? The tool you use to actually work with CDDL2 is the CDDLC tool, and that essentially is able to do CDDL2 processing on an input CDDL and generate a processed CDDL, which is compatible with CDDL 1.0. So in your pipeline, you would include a command like this, maybe with some additional flags, such as warning about undefined and things like that. And the question really is, where do we find the reference document? So where do we actually find, for instance, RFC 9052 or the internet draft that is referenced in the example here? And what we actually need is the CDDL for them. And I plan to put in some processing that allows you to get CDDL out of most documents, XML, text, whatever. But of course, that won't work reliably in all cases. So my current plan is to put all RFCs into the implementation, because RFCs don't change. It should be easy to extract CDDL from RFCs that have CDDL, include them in the gem. And then, of course, the only problem is if a new RFC comes out, the gem has to be updated, and what's the latency for that. The other place where the implementation currently looks for documents is the current directory. So there could be other places, so it could try to get things from the web or anything, but I'm not so sure about how that works with actual workflows, because you don't want all the surprises that come from referencing something on the web. So right now, this is the set of things that is supported. So this is the status. Michael. Michael, we're not hearing you.
Sorry, didn't want to interrupt. So I think that yeah, you should have another place CDDL path. So I gather you're basically proposing that you're going to do the file extract from RFC to make a database of CDDL files. And I guess I'm going to suggest mechanically, maybe you want to make that a separate gem. And I would appreciate being able to point at my own directory, particularly when working on, some set of linked documents.
Yeah, that's probably not needed so much for RFCs because these are actually pretty stable. So you are talking about the problem, of course, always is while you are working on documents, they are nowhere in the web or anywhere. So that's why the current directory is in this list, and you want to have a way to point to a different place than the current directory.
Yeah. It's stable, but it's in the RFC editor's queue. But it's not yet an RFC, and yet we're building the next set of stuff based on them, right?
Yeah, Russ comments that the extraction sounds a lot like yangcatalog.org for Yang modules. So maybe at some point we need that. Right now we are talking about maybe 30 or 50 documents. So I think it's still somewhat manageable. And also a little bit of hand processing may be needed for the oldest RFCs that do something with CDDL. So maybe that's an appropriate thing to include in the gem. But of course, the real problem is the documents that are being edited right now, and there needs to be access to them. Christian.
What I'd like to understand is if we already need this down conversion from CDDL2 to CDDL1, why does the pragma need to go through something that used to be a comment? To me, this style of hiding something in what used to be a comment smells a lot like HTML comments that say if Internet Explorer version equals. And I'd like to forget about those. So a document that imports from somewhere will not be usable standalone anyway. So why go through comments and not find a character that used to be invalid and build from that?
Yeah, I don't have a really strong opinion on that. I think it is useful to be able to use CDL1 tools on those files, just because there is such a diversity of tools. But yeah, you may be right that the usefulness of that will decline over time. But on the other hand, why don't we just say semicolon hash is a really nice combination that we all like, and then we don't really need to have this discussion. I don't know. So on the chat, Russ comments, when other SDOs are starting making CDDL, we will need a cross-SDO repository. Yeah, that's exactly the kind of complexity where I think it would be good if we had a very pragmatic 80% solution. And for me personally, it always has been fine to actually find those reference documents and have a makefile rule that does the right kind of extraction for that document right into the directory that is used for processing the CDDL. But yes, I understand that other people may have other styles of working. Okay, so Michael suggests doing a CDDL path with the usual Unix colon separated list of directories that are searched, and that could include dot. So maybe the default CDDL path would simply be dot, and you can set one.
But eventually that is all implementation details, right?
This is
So-
all implementation details, but I think these are important details because if we cannot offload these things to the implementation, we may have to address them in the language. So if we need something in the language to actually access the web and get something from there and do extractions from there, that's yeah, different from just saying this is an implementation matter, and we are pretty sure that the implementation can handle that for us.
Yeah.
Okay, so maybe I'll have the next version of the tool in a couple of hours or so. So has anybody actually played with the release I made this morning?
Not yet, sorry.
Yeah, the problem is that I finally broke down and said this will require a modern Ruby version because working with JSON structured data is just so incredibly ugly if you have to do it manually. So the support in the recent Ruby versions and Ruby versions of this decade is really useful for that. So if you don't have at least Ruby 3.0, then you may want to look for installing that. But of course, other people are welcome to do tools like that. It's not a giant piece of work to do these things. Okay, one question that also came up that is I don't have on the slide. Now, if I'm including something that intern itself includes something, then something like CDDL path or even the simple approach that is on the slide will become interesting. So do people have any opinion how to do nested includes, how to find the files for that? Yeah, I think this problem will be, Christian.
Other than going for full URIs and making sure that it's distinguished between this an identifier and please go fetch from there, none.
Okay, so maybe there will be something like an add to path directive or something like that. But I think we can see that when we actually start using it and see that things become unwieldy. And that's, of course, very important for me to actually get this feedback when people start using it. Okay, that was all I had.
Okay. And any more comments on the CDDL2 from participants? General questions. Carsten is here. Now is the time. Hearing none, we are approaching the end of the agenda. We do have the usual placeholder items, but essentially it's is there any other news about CBOR that you would like to share? Any other business? Anything you would like to put on the agenda for IETF 116 right now? Well, I'd say then that would give each of us about half an hour of time that we don't have any other appointments in to run gem install -- user cddlc. and play around with it.
Yes, please.
Thanks, everyone. With that, I think we should adjourn. See you in 2 weeks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks for taking notes, Marco.
Of
Yes.
course. See ya.
Bye.
Bye.